Good evening. I'm Charles Duffy, and this is Political Pulse. Tonight we have a special show, and we're privileged and honored to have the ex-governor of Maryland, Harry Hughes, governor from 1979 to 1987. Welcome.
Thank you.
And John Frece, who co-authored a book, actually an autobiography of Governor Hughes' life called My Unexpected Journey. Thanks both for coming on. And I want to take you back to Denton, Maryland, where you grew up, and it's on the Eastern Shore. And back when you grew up, the Bay Bridge didn't even go over to the Eastern Shore. I mean, what was it like there growing up?
Well, it was, I guess, a typical small country town. It was an agricultural area, and there wasn't a whole lot to do. And there was a movie theater, and but it was a great town to grow up in. We didn't have much to worry about in the way of traffic. Kids could ride their bicycles all over everywhere.
Dirt roads, no
Well, no, there were some paved streets, yeah, but there were also some unpaved ones too. But it was fun growing up there. It was very relaxed.
We're going to talk about the governor when you were the governor, but it was a long way from Denton to the governor's mansion, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And you mean in the way of years or in
just
distance?
Not in years, but just, hey, you know, growing up there, did you have any dreams that you would reach that?
No, didn't have any at all. If I had any dreams about what I was going to reach, it was baseball dreams.
You wanted to be a pro baseball player.
Yeah, that's right.
And John, I know that you co-authored the book, and you went back to Denton, didn't you? And
Sure.
What were your reflections of Denton?
Well, I of course didn't know Denton when Governor Hughes was a child as he grew up. My experience in Maryland came much later. In fact, I came to Maryland the year he was elected as governor, and so his reflections on Denton, you know, I had to rely on his memory and his tour of Denton.
Well, it's not a whole lot different today, really.
Well, what did you think about it when you went back, though, to write the book?
I thought about how relatively isolated it must have been at a time before the Bay Bridges. The way you traveled between the western and eastern shores was by ferry in those days, and they relied on a train that went from Kent Island to Ocean City. Is that right?
Yeah, it really wasn't operating when it was before my time.
Yeah.
There was something before my time. But it did used to operate from Love Point and go all the way to Ocean City and came right through Denton. But the mode of traffic to get over to the Western Shore to Baltimore was either ferry to Annapolis or drive up the whole peninsula and go around the bay to Baltimore, which we did, my family did most of the time.
And you went on, you became a lawyer, a state delegate, state senator, secretary of transportation. And I want to kind of move ahead a bit. Maybe we can come back and visit those positions if we have time. But I want to move up to the summer of 1978. You were running for governor of the state of Maryland. You had quit as the secretary of transportation. And people say it was the biggest comeback and you know, that anybody can remember in Maryland's governor's race. You were hovering at 5 or 7%. Do you remember the summer of 1978?
Oh yes, very well. It was a very lonely summer for me, and I had a very small staff. Actually, I had one fellow helping me in the campaign full time, and
what was his name?
Joe Cole, C-O-A-L-E, Joe Cole, and he and I traveled the state. We made a lot of U-turns because we made a lot of wrong turns, and we worked very hard. But it was very discouraging.
And it seemed like the campaign was having trouble gaining traction. And I think a quote, well, I like this quote. I thought it kind of summed up the state of the campaign during that summer. And it was by the summer, all I could do was campaign along the Inner Harbor with Joe, who you just mentioned, on a bullhorn, exhorting passersby to step up and meet Harry Hughes, Democrat candidate for governor. And then the other person there with you was your daughter, Beth, and she would march back and forth wearing a sandwich board and hand out campaign brochures. So I mean, that was basically your campaign, because you
Yeah, well,
weren't getting
we had a few other volunteers helping us, and particularly in the Baltimore metropolitan area. But throughout the state, we had, a few people, not many, very, very few people helping us. And so, as I say, it was a rather lonely summer for anyone running for governor.
Mm-hmm. And John, did you cover that race as a
yes.
reporter? And the main opponent, I know you had in that Democratic primary, you had 2 or 3 or 4, I think, opponents, but the main opponent was Montgomery County's own Blair Lee. His son writes for the Gazette
Right.
still. He was a lieutenant governor, acting governor. His running mate was Steny Hoyer, who's now the House Majority Leader.
Right.
I mean, that was an uphill battle. They were heavily favored.
Very formidable. In fact, Governor Hughes and I still laugh about when after he won the election, I was in those days working for UPI, and I got a call from my editors in New York saying, this is a big upset, you need to do a profile of Governor Hughes. And I pulled out my bottom drawer and pulled out my Hughes file, and I had one press release in there. I'd never met him, I'd never seen him, I'd never talked to him, because no one expected him to win it.
Mm-hmm. And you needed a miracle, it seemed like, in that summer. I think you even said that in your book. You needed a miracle. You were hovering at this 5%, 5 to 7% number. I mean, it's August 1978. The primary was just ahead, and you basically got a miracle. Can you explain what
Well,
happened?
the miracle, I got the endorsement of the Baltimore Sun papers.
Maybe that's not a miracle.
No, it's not a miracle,
a
but
big-
it gave my campaign some credibility that it did not have, and it was a very strong endorsement, and that really, I think, was a turning point. And then the television debates were started in August too, and see, I didn't have money to do my own television, so that was really the first opportunity to do some television, and that was a big help. The several debates we had, and then somehow the people got the idea. What we were combating was we'd like to vote for you, but you can't win, and people don't like to vote for a loser. But somewhere along the line, people got the idea that maybe I could win, and all of a sudden it turned around for us.
And the backdrop of the race, John, was some political corruption in Maryland. Now, Blair Lee was not involved in it. Very honorable person. I know you were friends with him. He was he took over as the acting governor when Marvin Mandel, the governor, was convicted. You had previous governor Spiro Agnew had, I think in 1973, he resigned as vice president. He was, I guess he pled no contest to federal or state charges. I don't recall, but that was kind of the background that, this corruption in Maryland.
Maryland had a very bad reputation at that time. In fact, the governor talks about how you would go out of state and people would say, "Oh, you're from Maryland," and not in a kind way. And of course, Governor Hughes, when he was Secretary of Transportation, resigned in a very public dispute over a subway contract that someone was trying to tamper with. And so integrity really became the central issue. Restoring integrity to Maryland became the central issue of his campaign, and really contrasted him with the other candidates. I think Blair Lee, you're correct, he was not part of any of that, but because of his being the lieutenant governor to Governor Mandel, I think the public may have been looking for just a complete change.
Mm-hmm. And the race was close. And the Baltimore Sun, the editorial really talked about that, the whole integrity aspect, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the race ended up being very close between you and Blair Lee. I think you beat him by 20,000 votes, but it would seem like at kind of a different time. Blair Lee that night came over to your headquarters and said, "Hey, I'm going to support Harry Hughes for governor in the general election."
Well, Blair and I were good friends. When I was in the Senate, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, Blair was my vice chairman, and we were very good friends and continued to be good friends even after the election. And matter of fact, I put him on the Board of Regents of the University of Maryland. You see, what what our hope was in that campaign is that we could get into the undecided vote. There, throughout the whole campaign, there was a big undecided vote, and Blair was not moving up at all. And our hope was maybe we can get into that undecided, and something at the end made that come true.
Was it the integrity issue, do you think?
I think that had a lot to do with it.
Mm-hmm. And there was a great quote after you won, and that you went on to, of course, win the general election. And this kind of reflects, your struggles during that summer of 1978. It was a great quote. I was beholden to no one when you became governor because no one supported my candidacy. So you kind of had a blank slate, didn't you?
Well, I think I probably entered the office of governor as unfettered as anybody ever did, probably. Yeah, I really had no obligations to anyone. There were just a few people that were helping me from the beginning. We called them the breakfast group of some Democrats, some Republicans actually, and it's about 7 or 8 people that stuck with me, all of whom were non-political.
Interesting. And John, you covered Governor Hughes's governorship years in Annapolis, I think for the Baltimore Sun. And Ben Cardin, current U.S. Senator, was the Speaker of the House of Delegates. What was it like that? What were those years like in Annapolis?
One of the things that changed when Governor Hughes became governor is he has, and he talks about this in the book, he has always had a respect for the independence and the rightful role of the General Assembly. And when he became governor, and he can speak to this better than I, but when he became governor, he really operated as if it was a partnership with the Senate President and the Speaker of the House and the other members of the General Assembly, that they had a rightful role rather than mandating everything that the legislature should do. And I think as a result, they had a very good, close working relationship and really tried to accomplish things together. You don't see that so much anymore, although Governor O'Malley seems to be doing pretty well with the General Assembly so far.
Is that just your personality? Hey, let's work it out, or is that something you tried to do?
First, I served in the legislature for 16 years,
right.
And so I was pretty familiar with the legislature. And I always had the view that they had the last say, and they do. I could veto legislation, but they can override the veto. So I entered that office with the idea that the General Assembly does have the final say. So obviously, with my legislative background, I was determined to work with them and did. And I had great help from people like Ben Cardin, who was a wonderful Speaker of the House. And my staff were instructed to adopt that attitude too. My budget secretary worked closely with the legislative chief financial officer,
Bill Ratchford.
Bill Ratchford, early on before the budget was presented, so that they would have full knowledge of what was in the budget, and I think that all helped.
Well, we're going to take our break now. We're going to come back and talk about some of your some of what you focused on as governor. We're going to be right back with former Governor Harry Hughes and John Frece.
Oh, you're lucky, young fella. Mm-hmm. You know, hospitals didn't even use ether for your procedure until about 1846. Yeah, slap on a few live leeches, grab a hacksaw, get to work. Of course, we don't use leeches anymore.
It's fun to know history. Find curious facts from America's past at loc.gov, the Library of Congress website.
We're back with former Governor Hughes and John Frece, and we're talking about when you became governor, and you really took on some tough issues. I mean, Maryland needed new prisons, the gas tax, I guess it funded the transportation fund, correct?
Yeah, well, it was one of the funds, for the sources of funds for the transportation, and we put in a gas tax increase in the election years, I recall. So.
That's not a lot of governors do that.
Well, I was advised not to, and the advisor, he said, let me do a poll over the weekend. I said, all right, but I've made up my mind. And he did a poll, and he came back and said, you might as well put it in. So,
And who was that advisor?
um,
Didn't he work for Bill Clinton
Dick Morris.
later?
Dick Morris. Dick Morris. He was just, we didn't use him much. We just used him on, there was some other guy that was really advising in the campaign
And
when he was governor.
you won a second term, 8-year governor, and the second term it seemed like you focused a lot on the Chesapeake Bay, cleaning up the bay.
That's right. Yeah. Well, there had been a report issued by the federal government, the U.S. government, that as a result of Senator Mathias's urging, they did a study, and I decided that let's not do what's happened so often in the past. They do a nice study and it goes on the shelf, nobody does anything. Let's do something about it. So we formed a group within our staff and state agencies to come up with a program.
Mm-hmm. And I know I've read a speech or two from Martin O'Malley, and he still talks about you telling him that, hey, the Bay is one issue that all Marylanders are interested in.
They really are. It's the Marylanders are
Did I say
very,
Mayor O'Malley or Governor? I mean I
You may have
call
said
him call him Mayor, but obviously he's now the governor.
well. The Bay is something that interests Marylanders. There's no question about it. And I can recall during that time when we were promoting these Bay programs, that as I travel in parades, as governor, you're in a lot of parades. People would yell, "Save the Bay! Save the Bay!" So it's sort of as a trademark of Maryland. It splits the state right up the middle, and it's just hard to imagine Maryland without the Chesapeake Bay.
And John, you were a reporter for The Sun during Governor Hughes' 2 terms, and what kind of stood out to you during those 2 terms?
Well, I think it was sort of the workmanlike approach to issues, that it wasn't flamboyant. It was interested in getting results. The governor was always available to discuss issues. He acknowledged when they were complex. He acknowledged when they when the answer wasn't immediately apparent, and that he needed to learn more before he did something. I thought it was a very steady performance.
Mm-hmm. And there was a quote, I think, at the you talked about your governorship and after you left office, and I guess it was an article or a commentary in the Baltimore Sun, and you said, "I believe we have restored integrity to all phases of state government. I am proud that no scandal, no sense of impropriety, and no abuse of power have touched any of my staff or appointments. The result is that in an age where scandals have regularly racked federal, state, and municipal governments, Maryland can once again be proud." I mean, is that one of your legacies?
I hope so. Yes, I hope so. It's really shouldn't be unusual and shouldn't be, it's something the public should be entitled to and should expect, honesty and integrity in government. And you shouldn't have to make a point of it, frankly.
Mm-hmm. And the title of your book, My Unexpected Journey, I thought, why was the book called that? And my guess was that, coming from Denton and becoming the governor of the state, maybe it was growing up in Denton, maybe it was unexpected. But why was that title chosen?
Well, we went through many titles, 30 or so, I suppose, and it sort of just evolved, I guess, out of a lot of discussion, and was finally decided upon in my living room one night with John and his wife and another couple, Joe Cole and his wife, and in all the discussion, it came out. My unexpected journey in politics was the first thing.
Right.
And somebody said, drop in politics, and just my unexpected journey. And it sort of fit, I think, my life, because as I was growing up, and even after, Navy, college, and all that, I didn't expect to go into politics at all. I had hoped to be a Major League Baseball player.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, looking back, do you wish you were you were a pitcher for the Yankees, or you happy with being the governor of Maryland?
well, I was happy being the governor of Maryland, but I would like to have been a pitcher for the Yankees, sure.
What was your best pitch?
I had pretty good fastball and curveball, yeah. And,
Interesting. And there was a funny story in the book that your wife Pat, you went to her house to ask her father and talk to her about being getting married to Pat, and you told her father, I want to get married, and he groaned. You put this in her book. You groaned, and it kind of indicated that maybe he didn't think you had much of a future.
I don't think he did. And he was justified in thinking that, actually, and because I was groping as to what I wanted to do and be, and but at that time, though, I decided, to practice law. So I was in law school at the time, and working for the government in Washington, and going to GW Law School at night.
And John, writing the book, what stands out as some of the things that you learned about the governor? That you must have thought that was a funny story when he went over to his future wife's home.
There were a lot of good stories like that, and what stood out for me was I had, as you mentioned, I had covered Governor Hughes during his 8 years as governor, but I had not covered him and hadn't even been in Maryland during his 16 years in the legislature, or his years as Secretary of Transportation. So a lot of that was new to me, and I guess I was surprised to realize he had as many achievements as a legislator as he later had as a governor, and so it was a very balanced, successful political career.
And you did have a great legacy also as a legislator, state senator, and one of those is the '67 big tax structuring that happened in Maryland. You were one of the main forces behind that, and it set up the current structure. Really, it hasn't been changed since 1967, and we had Michael Enright, who's Governor O'Malley's chief of staff, on, and he's reading between the lines, maybe they're going to look at maybe changing some things because of the boom and bust that Maryland now goes through with the funding for Thornton and some of the other things. So really that tax package has stood up to the test of time.
Well, it was a big package and a big change. We went from the flat income tax to a graduated income tax, and we increased the sales tax. We provided state aid for police protection for the first time. We authorized the counties to impose the piggyback income tax. It was a major overhaul of the tax structure of the state, and maybe it's time for a relook at some of that.
And it was interesting to see that your mom, Helen Rowe Hughes, you called her a central person in your life, and I guess it was growing up in Denton, but do you ever think about her now?
Oh, sure. Think about her a lot. She was a school teacher, and unfortunately, fortunate for her, she was my homeroom teacher for 4 years in high school, and she was just a wonderful, lovely person, and I can see her night after night sitting up late marking papers and helping students on Saturdays and evenings. She was just an institution, really, in the community.
And what was her influence on you?
Very great, very great. She was totally honest and expected me to be, and she was a very caring person, and I hope I inherited some of that from her too.
It's just other big influences on your life, and there was a fella in Denton, also a lawyer, and I wondered if he played a big impact in your life. You never know, who plays an impact in people's lives as they move up the ladder, but his name was Tom Everngham.
Everngham, yes.
Everngham. Was he also another person?
Yes, he was. He when I was in law school, he offered me the opportunity to come into his office when I got out of law school, and I didn't really know Tom Everngham very well, and I thought that was a pretty nice thing. And I had nothing to do. I had no place to go when I finished law school, and so I went in his office and worked as an associate with him for a few years, and he was very good to me, very good to me.
And didn't he also encourage you to run for elected office?
He did. When the first time I ever ran for office, there was a vacancy in the House of Delegates, and the State Central Committee was tied up on filling the vacancy for months and months. There were 3 and 3 on the State Central Committee, and so he suggested I put my hat in the ring because I wasn't involved in politics, so I wouldn't be involved with either one of the factions, and I did. And make a long story short, they met and they deadlocked on me too, so that got me interested, and I decided to run, and I ran the next election and won.
And John, I know that you go to, with your book, you go to book signings, and is it going back through memory lane? I know you had one book signing at the Maryland State Archives.
Right.
What are those book signings like?
Well, a book like this is of great interest to people who like Maryland politics and Maryland history and know the players, so often what happens is a lot of the people who come to those events are people that the governor knows or people I know who have been involved in the political world in Maryland for the last 50 years or so. And it's in some ways it's sort of like a reunion. It's sort of fun.
It's good to see. Is it good to see a lot of your old friends?
Oh yes, yes. I'm surprised at the interest, actually, in the book from some of my old friends and some of the people I don't know, and so it's been an interesting experience writing it with John, and it's been a very interesting experience seeing the response to it.
Mm-hmm. And you're still involved. It seems like to me you're still somewhat shaping public policy. And I know one issue that you're involved in is stem cell research. Another is the death penalty. And you wrote a piece in the Washington Post basically coming out against the death penalty.
Yes, I've always been against it. I didn't have it presented to me when I was during my terms as governor, but I am opposed to it. There's no statistic anywhere shows that it's a deterrent, and there are a lot of statistics that show that mistakes can be made, and those mistakes are irretrievable.
And how about the stem cell issue?
Well, I'm very much concerned about that because for 2 reasons, personal reasons. My only grandson has juvenile diabetes, and my wife has Parkinson's disease, and it's probably too late for her, but this stem cell research, particularly embryonic stem cell research, holds great hope for cures for people with diabetes, with Parkinson's, and many, many other diseases, some 70 diseases. And we're making some progress now in Maryland, and Governor O'Malley is very much in favor of it, so I'm hoping it's going to take some time, but I'm hoping we see some great results.
We have about 30 seconds left, and you look back at your life and your career so far, the quilt of your life, so to say, and what comes to mind? Anything? Just a heck of a ride?
Yeah, it's been a heck of a ride. Yeah, it's been a very interesting life, and I hope a very productive one. And I don't want to deal too much in the past because I still got a lot more to do. And,
I said so far.
yeah, okay.
Thank you very much for coming, Governor. Thank you, John, for joining us.
Thank you.
The book is My Unexpected Journey. I highly recommend it. I'm Charles Duffy, and remember, if it's Tuesday night at 9:30 or Thursday night at 9, it's Political Pulse on Channel 16 TV. I'll see you next week.